Hi there, welcome. This is the Kelly's Astrology podcast, where you can find insight, guidance, and understanding through astrology. I'm Kelly, and I'll be your host. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Kelly's Astrology podcast. Today's show is full of insights about the upcoming full moon in Libra. That will be happening on April 1st or April 2nd, depending on whereabouts you are. This full moon kicks off a couple of weeks of really supportive and growth-focused astrology. So that'll be basically the first half of April. So I'm quite excited to explore some of these themes with you. Before we dive in, I wanted to tell you about my new live astrology training coming up this May. It's on going further with Profections, and in it, I'm going to teach you a bunch of advanced extras that you can use when timing with Profections. This course will be ideal for you if you have already been working with annual Profections and you're ready to go further with deeper insights and more refined techniques. Pop over to my website, kellysastrology.com, to find out more or to sign up. Of course, we will put the direct link to the Going Further with Profections course in the show notes below as well. All right, let's get back to the full moon in Libra. So the full moon is at 12 degrees of Libra, and it's going to be on the 1st of April if you're in Canada and the US, or it'll be on the 2nd of April if you're in the UK, Europe, or Australia. So this full moon in general looks quite helpful, and it's especially insightful and inspiring. That has to do with a really potent influence from Jupiter in Cancer, which we'll get to in a minute. One of the other things that looks helpful about this particular full moon in Libra is that it is off axis to Mars. So Mars is currently in Pisces and the full moon in Libra. From that lens of traditional astrology, there isn't a classical aspect between Libra and between Pisces. So the full moon in Libra does not have to manage any involvement from Mars. And that reduces a level of tension that we just don't have to deal with around this full moon. Of course, though, because this full moon is in Libra, it is in the sign opposite Saturn's place, which of course right now we have Saturn in Aries. So what that means is that the moon will oppose Saturn in the hours right before the full moon. And that might mean that the day before the full moon or the lead up to the full moon feels really intense. It might even bring a bit of a harsh realization, particularly about practical limits or practical limitations. If so, I really want you to pay attention to whatever limits, boundaries, regulations, or requirements you need to be aware of or you need to be working with. Once the moon moves through that opposition to Saturn and then she's into the full moon, of course, then we're into the full moon space where illumination and insights of all kinds become possible. The moon, once she gets to the full moon place, she's technically separating from Saturn, and whatever fear or worry is brought up in the day before the full moon, you sort of find your way through it, or as you move away from it, it doesn't feel as pressing or as restraining as you might have initially thought. So with the moon being full in Libra, so it's a full moon at 12 degrees Libra, you might gain new wisdom about a relationship or a partnership matter, or you might see more clearly the role that you play in the interpersonal dynamics that you're experiencing with others. So these are some kind of general full moon in Libra themes. When I was thinking about this full moon in Libra and, prepping this episode, I kept coming back to flowers. And I'm like, well, it is a full moon in a sign ruled by Venus. So flowers, beauty and nature, that definitely makes sense. I was also thinking about how where I live in Southern Ontario, the start of April is the very early start of our gardening season. So we might have some crocus or some snowdrops. We might, if we're lucky, have a few tulips. But it's that idea of like the garden is starting to show its beauty. And I just wonder if that as a symbol might be a clue that this full moon is trying to help you see the treats or the pleasantness or the beauty in your life or in your current circumstances. So we're talking a little bit generally about the full moon here. If you wanted to take a more personal approach in your work and connection with this full moon in Libra, I'd invite you to look to the house in your birth chart which holds the sign of Libra. So that could be your first house of self, if you're a Libra ascendant or a Libra rising. Could be your fourth house of home and family, and that would be if you're a Cancer rising. Libra could be on your 11th house of friends. That would be if you are a Sag rising or a Sag ascendant. And of course, Libra could be in any of the other 12 houses. So the reason to work with it this way is we each have a personal or a unique relationship to Libra, depending on what house in our chart and therefore what sets of topics in our lives Libra is influencing. So the topics of whatever house you have Libra on the cusp of, they're the topics where you're going to receive personal insights and gain new understanding through this full moon. So if you're a Libra rising, a Libra ascendant chart, the wisdom or the insight that you get under this full moon may be about your body, maybe about your identity, maybe about something to tweak or change to improve your well-being and your physical vitality. So we can look at the general topics of Libra. I think that's a good starting place for all of us to keep in mind as general themes that we might be seeing collectively, but we can get more personal by identifying which house in my chart is Libra and how is that part of my chart and life being lit up through this full moon. And when we get light in astrology, we get insight, we get understanding, we get increased in awareness. We get that sense of like, oh my gosh, I see it now. I've made sense of it, or I understand what's really going on here. So that's going to be really helpful. And it's good to, think about it this way, because the full moon typically only lights up each house in your chart just once a year. So it really is kind of a special thing to focus on and tune into. Okay, so going further now, it's important to know that the first aspect the moon makes after becoming full is a square aspect with Jupiter in Cancer. This is where the good stuff that is held within this full moon comes from. This looks helpful, hopeful, and especially supportive. And if you need to make peace or negotiate a fair and just agreement, this full moon has your back. The moon linking to Jupiter, so the moon is full at 12 Libra, Jupiter is at 15 Cancer, so it's only 3 degrees. That is within that super tight, super potent aspect orb that ancient astrologers refer to within that 3-degree orb. And so this is a very Jupiterian full moon, even though it's technically in the sign of Libra. So the moon making this link to Jupiter while it's so big, while it's so full, can bring an exciting achievement. It might help you reach like a milestone or this sense of culmination, this sense of like, I did it. It might also help light the way forward towards a meaningful experience. So I see a lot about this full moon in Libra as like lighting the path. Like, where do you want to go? Okay, this is what it looks like. Or if you're not sure which direction to choose, there's an instinct or an intuition that says, let's go in this direction now. We want to listen to that. With this full moon, so influenced by Jupiter in Cancer, you might be inspired to really stretch for something that you long for, that you've dreamed about for a long time, or you might be ready to make a change that's inspired by your own sense of purpose. It's kind of like choosing what's meaningful for you rather than pursuing things that your family, that culture, or that society has said you should want. So this is like, what is really right for me and how can I get closer to that? However we spin it, whatever kind of words or language or concepts we bring in to try to understand this full moon squared Jupiter, it's definitely an auspicious omen to have as part of the full moon. Jupiter's link to freedom is important to remember as well, because I think that's highlighted under this full moon, and this might help you conjure up a life that's more free or more aligned to your personal preferences. Some of us are going to be making decisions under the light of the full moon at the start of April. Others of us are going to be kind of getting a vision or a set of intentions or guidance that help clarify how to move forward from here. Under this full moon, you might realize where you're ready to grow, like where you're itchy for new experiences and ready to get out of your comfort zone. And that might mean that you kind of really come to understand that to get where you want to go, you're going to need to leave behind familiar places, situations. You might even need to leave behind some familiar and safe people so that you can do the growing and evolving that you are ready for. Of course, with Jupiter highlighted, we have other themes of Jupiter that come into the mix as well. Things like adventure, travel, and discovery, or things like study, learning, teaching, and the pursuit of wisdom. For me personally, this full moon will be coming just as I'm kicking off a little bit of a spring holiday, spring break with my husband in one of our favorite countries. So we are super excited about that. And I hope you're also doing something super fun. Let me know in the comments below what you have got, what you've been conjuring up for this early part of April. Now, look, it is a square to Jupiter, and so that always adds this possibility that you might overdo it. You might overshoot the mark. You might say yes to too many things. You might stretch yourself a little too far. But with Jupiter making such a golden and uplifting angle, my sense is that the stretch will be worth it. It's a great full moon for taking a risk or a leap of faith. Now, I do also need to add in that, a full moon always heightens emotion. It creates, bigger feelings or like a flood of feeling. And if you then put that full moon square Jupiter in a water sign, we're going to have a lot of emotion that needs to be talked through, dissected, and digested. So another way of thinking about this full moon in Libra is that it is big emotions, big feelings, and we need to find our way through them. So whether that's through breath work, whether that's through gentle movement, that idea of walking it through, like the walk and talk, go for a walk with your bestie, your buddy, like a coworker, a family member, your romantic partner. Just do the walk and talk. It's going to be really helpful for digesting the big feelings and the many ideas that are coming up. But you might also find that you want to just put your thoughts and ideas down on the page. We want to, it's kind of a full moon in an air sign. So the talking, the language, the naming things is really important. But Jupiter in a water sign is like, we have to make sure we address the underlying feelings. So it's that sort of navigating between the ideas, the dreams, the pictures, and the visions, and the feelings that go with different opportunities. But either way, this full moon in Libra definitely has lots of emotion coming to the surface. See if you can be open to receiving that feeling as a clue or as a source of insight and wisdom for you. Okay, so now we move on and we go deeper into the full moon chart. The full moon in Libra is ruled by Venus, which at the time of the full moon will be in Taurus. Venus will have just entered Taurus a few days before the full moon. And of course, Venus is at home in Taurus. It's one of her home signs. She's technically in domicile or rulership. Taurus's position relative to Libra, where the full moon is the 8th house position. And that can help with all kinds of psychological healing and recovery. When we have a benefic kind of tied to topics of the 8th house, especially a well-placed benefic, we have the sense for something that I might describe as like the ease of suffering. So what is going to help you with things that you've been struggling with? And because the 8th house has that psychological undertone, this is about taking care of our mental health, making choices that are good for our psyche and our mindset and our nervous system. And so Venus in Taurus is like pointing towards possibilities for healing, for recovery, maybe from moving on from pain from the past. Now, of course, the 8th position or 8th house also is connected to some money topics. So this full moon in Libra ruled by Venus in Taurus might highlight investments, retirement savings, a tax situation, or just a matter relating to a debt or a loan that you have. If you need to renegotiate a financial obligation, this will actually be a really helpful lunation for doing so. So have a conversation about your preferences for how you want things to be different going forward in some of those money matters. Now, keep in mind that when we say a planet is in domicile or in rulership, we are talking about a planet that the theory tells us Venus in Taurus has resources to draw on. So she has the right tools for the task at hand. Now, her tools are Venusian in nature, they're Taurian in their kind of elemental quality and characteristics, but they are the resources we can draw on now. So skills or tools that are oriented towards stability, respectful interactions, but also coming from a place of the recognition of slow, steady building or accumulation over time. And so as you consider your circumstances now through the lens, through the insight, through that kind of divine perspective of this full moon in Libra, whether you're considering your financial circumstances, circumstances in a relationship, or your circumstances in life in general, this full moon might help remind you that you have skills and contacts that you can call on for help or for guidance or support. So there's very much a theme under this full moon in Libra, which maybe is a no-brainer because the full moon is in Libra, but that you are not navigating what you're dealing with alone. And that might mean this is a great full moon to request some help if you need it. If you're in a position to offer help, this is a full moon that might inspire you to give abundantly where you're able. Now, if we come back to Venus, she herself is moving into an intense square angle with Pluto in Aquarius. Now, that peaks April 3rd or 4th, depending on where you are. And that is a clue. So the full moon in Libra, ruled by Venus in Taurus, who herself is dealing or coming into a square with Pluto. So this is a clue that a deeper adjustment might be required. We want to get beneath the surface, and that we might need to explore a new level of honesty. Venus square Pluto is a little bit about excavating or investigating what is underneath the surface of what's going on. If you're looking to build trust or deepen a connection with someone, you might consider opening up about a fear, a worry, or a past secret. It's a funny way with Venus-Pluto combinations about how honesty can help lead to deepen trust. It's very scary to be honest in a new way with someone. And so there's definitely like exploring the edge of vulnerability themes here with this Venus square Pluto aspect. I wonder a little bit about, with Venus square Pluto, the idea of taking your power back in a situation where previously you felt powerless or that you didn't have control, you didn't have a say. And I wonder if that's one of our highest possibilities with Venus Pluto, is about like transforming an unhealthy power dynamic in, a situation with another person. So there is a little bit of an undertone that says it's worth digging into the shadows here. We're going to find a treasure or some sort of relief, but we've got to be prepared to confront something that's a little uncomfortable first. So that is Venus's influence, or her threads that she brings in to the full moon. Now, if we take a look forward from the full moon, remembering that the full moon kind of sets the tone for the following 2 weeks, what we see is that the 2 weeks following this full moon, so basically from April 1 to April 17, which is when we have the next lunation, which is a new moon in Aries. So that period from April 1 to April 17, that has some really wonderful astrology. Other than the Venus square Pluto aspect, which I just mentioned, which is a little intense, all the other aspects that happen between these lunations have very constructive, productive, and helpful themes. There are aspects from Mercury, the Sun, and Venus to Jupiter and Cancer. So we get some of the technically best aspects of the year happen in this first half of April. We also have really energizing combinations involving sextiles with Mercury, Mars, and Uranus. And so when I look at this period, it's really my wish for you that this full moon in Libra helps lift your spirits and raise your gaze so that you can truly appreciate the wonders that are right within your reach, but also that you can see what's possible with a little bit of stretching and growing as your intention. I'd invite you to have as much fun as you can and to enjoy a variety of sparkling connections and opportunities during this first half of April. In terms of honoring Jupiter over these next couple of weeks, Jupiter is really influential in this full moon as we've broken down, but also via the aspects that Mercury, the Sun, and Venus will make in the first half of April. To really honor Jupiter, you might do something as simple as gratitude rituals or just simple expressions of gratitude for what you already have that's really pleasant and enjoyable. Or you might be in that zone of tapping into the river of generosity and sharing abundantly with others. So these would be wonderful ways to honor Jupiter in this first half of April. The new moon in Aries on the 17th does bring a totally different kind of energy, and I'll be diving into that more in our next episode. For now, I'd love to hear what kind of wisdom that you are accessing under this uplifting and expansive full moon in Libra square Jupiter in Cancer. Thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to sharing more again soon. Until then, take care.